Now, to see that this is not valid for those of you, I mean, most people might pick it up immediately. We can use the first method of testing validity. Can we consistently describe a situation in which the premises are true and the conclusions false? Well, imagine a case where John is the only logic student who did not study and did poorly on the test. And imagine, we have a class that's of 100 people, so 99 out of 100 did well, so almost all logic students did well. But John he's a logic student, but he's the one guy who did not do well. He did poorly on the test. So 1's true, 2's true. However, in those circumstances, 3 is false, so that argument is invalid. And we intuitively went through, looking through the pattern, that is almost all A's or B's, which is different than all A's or B's. X is an A, therefore X is a B. Well, can we fill in that pattern in such a way that the premises are true and the conclusion is false? Well, think about this one. Almost all A presidential candidates are men, or could be were men, make it timeless. And we'll make X Geraldine Ferraro, who was Walter Mondale's running mate. I can't remember who they were running against. Maybe it was the first George Bush. And the reason I'm bringing her up as opposed to Sarah Palin is there's actually an example in the Feldman book that turns on the fact that she, at the point the book was written, was the only female vice presidential candidate. So notice 1 and 2 are true. Almost all vice presidential candidates are men. And Geraldine Ferraro, that is a vice presidential candidate, or was a vice presidential candidate. In fact, as Feldman points out, before the year 2000, or as his examples working on, I think he does it in an explanation, she was the only female presidential candidate before 2000, and since then we've only had one other, Sarah Palin. But 3 is false, because Geraldine Ferraro was not a man, she was a woman. And then method 3, is it a known valid pattern of argument? Well, it isn't. So according to all of our tests of validity, and actually you're probably better off starting in the reverse order, but according to all of our tests of validity, it's not a valid pattern argument. Invalid, right? But it was still a good argument. And notice so far we've had the definition. A good argument has 2 characteristics: good connections between the premises and conclusion, well formed, which we said was valid, and good premises, true premises. So a good argument is a sound argument according to that definition. But notice when we're looking at validity, validity guarantees that true premises lead to true conclusions. And that's the standard for what we call deductive arguments, because in a deductive argument, the truth of the premises lead to the truth of the conclusion, guarantee the truth of the conclusion. And obviously valid arguments are good arguments, but there are good arguments, namely inductive arguments, in which the premises are good, well-formed reasons for the conclusion, but nonetheless the truth of the premises of a good inductive argument render the conclusion reasonable or probable, but don't guarantee the truth of that conclusion. Now, if we take a look at almost all logic students did well on the test. John's a logic student, therefore John did well on the test. Let's take a look at another one. Most logic students, and we're actually going to have variations, a couple of variations. Most logic students did well on the test. John is a logic student, therefore John did well on the test. Then we have some logic students did well on the test. John's a logic student, therefore John did well on the test. And notice they all are, one last one, and this one I think is a deductive one, but none of the logic students did well on the test. John's a logic student, John didn't do well on the test. At least the first three arguments there are well formed, and notice the way we've lined them up top to bottom, we're talking about in terms of the strength, the kind of logical strength of the argument.